Hello friends, this is Sam. So basically I'm recording this session as response to the request of one of my learner, Srinivas Reddy. So Srinivas has asked how to develop HTTP client in Tibco BusinessWorks 6.x. I hope Srinivas you are watching this particular session. Okay, so firstly, what is this HTTP client all about? Firstly, there is HTTP web service we have already developed in Tibco BusinessWorks 6, and that is listening on a particular port. Let's say my HTTP based web service is listening on the port 9191 and it is running on local machine. So the host name is localhost. So this web service is already there. And what this web service does, this web service takes number 1 and number 2 from the client and returns addition of that. So for example, if we send 10 as number 1 and 20 as number 2, it will return 30 as addition of that two numbers. Now, as of now, we are using browser as HTTP client. Okay, so let me show you that how this HTTP web service is working without our own client. So we are using browser as a client. So let me show you that. So I open my Business Studio and I do have already my web service developed. So let me show you. Yep. So this is my web service, and this web service is actually listening on the port number. Let me show you. This is HTTP connection. So as I said, localhost and 9191. Okay, and if I go to process, I can show you that it is receiving the HTTP request, logging some information and send the addition of two numbers as HTTP response. So this is what this web service is doing. Now let me do one thing. Let me just debug that. So let me debug this particular application only. Okay, let me start that HTTP based web service. The parameter names are number 1 and number 2. Remember that. So whenever we will invoke that from the browser, it will be important for us to remember. So it's started. Yes, it is started. Let me start the browser and let me give HTTP localhost 9191 question mark and the parameters number 1 equal to 10 and number 2 equal to 20. Let me press enter. My web service is already running. Really running or not? Let me just check it whether it is running. Oh, it's giving some error. Let me just try it one more time. HTTP localhost 9191 number 1, number 2, let me give as 10 and let me give as 20. Yes, so it's working fine. It's giving the parameters and all, and it's giving perfectly fine. The HTTP based web service is working fine. Okay, now maybe last time there may be some glitch or something and it was not working. Let me show you again from the fresh thing. Let me start it again and let me close the browser. Let me close this also. So it is recommended you can use Chrome or Internet Explorer. Okay, so it's starting. Application dependencies are resolved and started BW application. Let me start it and let me type the URL. Okay, HTTP localhost 9090 number 1 equal to 100, and so this is format of HTTP request. 200, press enter. I think number 1 equal to 100, number 2, okay, so mistake, enter. Yes, you can see that it's working fine. Just change the numbers, check it out, it's working fine. So my web service is perfectly fine. Now what I want to do, I don't want to use browser as a client, but I want to develop my own HTTP client. Okay, so let us develop our own HTTP client. So let me just stop this first, clear that. Let me go to design view, and in design view let us create the new project. So file, new, okay, project, BusinessWorks application, so that's fine. Let us give the name. Let me call it as HTTP web service client 1. Okay, so that's fine, rest is fine, we are okay, finish. So it got created, and now let us create the process. Now remember, whenever you want to develop your HTTP client, so you have to use which activity, that is important. Whenever you are developing the web service itself, you use HTTP receiver to receive the request. Okay, you use send HTTP response to send the response to the client. So if you check out your web service, you have developed it in that way. So if I check out, so to request, receive the request, HTTP receiver, and to send a response, HTTP response. So what is remaining? Wait for HTTP request. This is also used whenever you develop the web service. So there is one activity which is you can say that request response activity. There are two arrows over here, which is request response. So what is the use of this send HTTP request activity? It will send a request to the web service, HTTP based web service, and get the response. So this is what is the significance of this particular activity. So whenever you develop the client, you have to use this activity. So let me get into the process. Let me take, this is not the starter activity, by the way. So if you take this, this is not the starter activity. So you need to have some starter activity. I will use timer. Timer is the starter activity. Okay, now what we are going to do, I'll tell you that what we are going to do. We will be starting both web service and the client in the same debug studio, in the same studio. Both the project we are going to start. So what we want is that this client should not hit the web service before it really starts. So I just put a sleep activity over here, which will give sufficient time to web service to start and settle first, and then it will send the HTTP request. So I will add sleep activity over here and exit at the end. Let me connect all of them. So timer will execute this particular process only once. I'm okay with that. Sleep, so it will be like for 10 seconds. So this is milliseconds, so 10,000. This is 10,000 millisecond. Let me save it. Let me come to send HTTP request. Now first thing, this will be client side. So what we need to do is that here we don't have the client resource created. Okay, we don't have the client resource really created over here, which will be containing the port and the host of the web service. So let us see whether it will be created here. So it just added the activity. It is adding one more activity. Let us do one thing. Let us create one resource, which will be HTTP client resource. Okay, let us create HTTP client resource. So let me just create that, new, and HTTP client. This one you have to create. So let us create that. Okay, then finish. And after you created that, you need to give the host name. So you can see the host name is fine. The port is 80. So I don't want 80. I want to connect 9191. So that's what I have done. And what do you do now? Come back to your process, and here in your process you just configure here the connection. Okay, and by mistake whichever this new property we have created, let us delete that, otherwise it will create the problem. And that property is created in process property. So I just go here, this particular process, and I go to process property. So this one is getting used, but this one is not getting used, by mistake I created. So let us delete that. Okay, so remember, I repeat, whenever you add something here by clicking, so it is adding a new process property. This is already created. So actually what I have done, I have created a HTTP connection resource and configure that over here. Okay, so that additional activity I just deleted. Then parameters. So you should know that which parameters your web service take, HTTP based web service take. So we know that it takes number 1 and number 2. So let me add 2 parameters. The parameter name is number 1. Be sure about the case sensitivity. Number 2, as it is, the way web service is expecting, make it required, that's fine. Then let us go to input, and on input I don't have to give host port because it is anyway coming from HTTP client resource. So I just give values of parameters, nothing else. So I just give value of parameter here, let's say 180 and let's say 280. Okay, save, all well. On problems tab I don't have any problem. Okay, so now let us run web service and client both together. So let me go to run debug configuration so that I can select both of them. So I selected both of them and I say debug. So my web service will be running first and client will be paused at the sleep activity. So it will be getting busy in the sleep activity. I'll show you that here. Okay, you can see client started, okay, and it is at sleep activity. Let us come to send. Okay, so your web service also got started and it came to send HTTP request, and whenever it got the request, it started the job of HTTP based web service. And you can see that if you go to job data and check that here, go to the exit and check the job data. So exit, and you can see here, check out whether addition is coming 460. That's what. Okay, so 460 is the addition of whatever 180 plus 280 we have added. Okay, so I hope it is clear how to develop HTTP based client in Tibco BusinessWorks 6. Thanks for watching this session, friends. See you in the next session. Bye bye.